Hello, I'm Kirsteen, and this is Kirsteen's Aesthetic Art and Travel. I'm an artist, and all my life, when I've told people that, they usually say things like, "Oh my goodness, I love art, but I never get a chance to practice," or "I wanted to do art, but my careers advisor told me you'll be lucky," and similar things like this, which are the reasons that they stopped enjoying art or stop doing it. I've created this YouTube channel to help the people who say, "Oh, I wish I could draw," and similar. And I am today going to talk about drawing from life and also Inktense pencils, which I adore. All right, so I have here a couple of flowers. Well, actually, a flower and a piece of greenery. Now, drawing from life is absolutely the best way to go if you can. If you have to have a photograph or a sketch you made earlier, then fair enough, go ahead and create art anyway. And good drawing is often based on good observation. So having something to observe, something to really look at and really see how it is extremely helpful. So a photograph, if you can't do better, but if you can, from life, for so many reasons. One, you're not stuck with the angle the photographer chose. So if you've got some photo from this angle, you can't change your mind and decide you like it better from this angle or from the other side or whatever you like. Another is the just sheer amount of detail. Although you can zoom in on a high resolution photograph, you're still not going to be able to tip the leaf this way and that, or the petal this way and that, and see the tiny veins that you can quite to the extent. I mean, obviously you could take it all the way to looking at this under a microscope. There is no limit to the amount of detail in here. And then there's a kind of aliveness to it as well. The sort of original thing that then went to the photograph, that then went to the paper. It's a lot of steps through which to not lose the aliveness and the freshness of your message. So it helps you keep the aliveness going. And I think, and also photographs sometimes distort things. If you take something through a lens, it's not always the way the eye sees it. Now here I have a roll of Inktense pencils. As you can see, I've put them in color groups and I've left gaps. They didn't come in this roll, they came in tins like pencils normally do. I have the pencil sharpener hidden in there as well. But I find these really good if you travel. If you want to take your artwork, I don't mean like necessarily travel overseas or something, but just if you want to take your artwork out to the park and draw from life, then they don't rattle around in this. And the trouble with the tins is sometimes the lids come off and then they go everywhere. When this lid's off this, they're still each individually gripped and they don't go everywhere. And then I've put my beloved Mitsubishi Uniball eyes in here. I have the fine and the broad Mitsubishi Uniball eye, which is a great pen to use along with other things, because those felt-ended pens that they give you in art shops, the sets of drawing pens that you always see, let's say drawing pens, they felt end as soon as you get it damp, or you drag it through some paint, or you drag it through some wax, the felt end is destroyed and they cease to work. And if you bash it too hard, they go sort of like this at the end, and then they make a messy line. So these ballpoint pens are much better, and this one is waterproof ink and very good quality. I also have wax crayons so that I can do wax resist that I've mentioned in an earlier tutorial, which is basically when you put down wax and it stops the wet media, the wet, in this case pencils, getting on that part, or watercolors. And I have a couple of these brushes that have built-in water reservoir. Again, very handy if you're trying to go out and work somewhere from life. If you want to sit in the park and draw the view, then you don't need a separate water thing to just put a little bit of water on your picture. I wouldn't leave that in there for a long time. I have it in here if I'm going out for the day, but I don't leave it in here permanently. Okay. So that's my kit today, and I've already made a little drawing from one of the flowers different flower that I had with it, and you can see that I've used the black line and then the pencil on top. Now it looks like it's been watercolored perhaps, but it actually hasn't. It's these pencils. So these are made by Derwent. Actually, if I get a slightly longer one, you can actually see the name on it. And Derwent Inktense. They've made up this name because instead of being some kind of, I don't know, whatever else, lead or something might be in the pencil, it is ink, solid ink. And then when you get it wet, there's a little brush logo here, it spreads around. So this hasn't got any watercolor on it, it's just the Inktense pencils, and then I've used that brush to spread the color around a bit. Now I also think it's not always a good idea to spread the color around completely, because otherwise what's the point in having pencils? You can keep some of this nice texture. It's very controllable as well. Can be very controllable compared with a brush. Alright, so to some art. One of the things that I like to do with these pencils is start with the ink, start with the pen and ink, and then work on top. But another thing that I often like to do is to work on wet paper, which I'll also show you on another bit. So you soak the whole paper and then work on it. Now when you're drawing something, you should spend more time looking at the thing that you are drawing than you spend looking at the paper. So it's look at the drawing, look at the paper to make a line, look at the drawing. Forget that, scratch that. Look at the subject, look at the real life subject, and then look at the drawing and make a line. Look at the real life subject, look at the drawing and make a line. So basically the looking happens more than the drawing, the making lines as such. If you think of drawing as making lines on paper, actually drawing is looking and making some lines on paper. It's the lesser thing. Now obviously I'm going to do some tutorials of drawing exercises and different techniques, but any special technique that you can learn by doing a drawing course or something, you can also learn just by looking and practice. You can see the thing, and these techniques were figured out originally by artists looking. So artists in the Renaissance who worked out perspective and things like this, they started out by observing what was there, by really looking. And that doesn't mean to say I don't agree with learning and techniques and ways perspective work and ways proportion work, and I have a tutorial on the proportion of the face, and I have a tutorial on ellipses, and I'm going to do one on objects disappearing in the distance and perspective. But don't feel that you have to know all this technical sort of stuff about how to draw. You can also just look and practice, and eventually that will pay off. Right, so I'm on this one, I'm going to give it a little colour with the Inktense pencils. Here I have all my greens, and I'm thinking this is kind of a dusty-ish green. It's not a very bright, strong green, perhaps. I don't really mind if it's exactly like the original thing, but what I do notice about this that I rather like is that the undersides of the leaves are lighter than the tops, and I do want to give it that feel. I just bung some colour on here. I don't need to worry too much about making this perfect because I'm going to splash all over it with my water. And it's going to end up changing anyway. In fact, I'm not even going to colour in the lines. Look at that. Your art is your art. So if I ever say something in any tutorial that just doesn't seem right to you, that you think to yourself, well, I don't think that would work for me, or I don't agree with that, or that would spoil my idea, then reject it. If it isn't right for you and your art, then it isn't right for you and your art, and that is fine by me. You don't need to think, well, Kirsteen knows, and Kirsteen's got a degree from Harriet Watt University, and Kirsteen's been doing it for all these years, so I must be wrong, even though I'm looking at what she's saying and thinking that one isn't right. So this is my brush, which contains water already. I'm just making more of a puddle here. And as you can see, I'm just going for spreading some, but not necessarily all of it, because if I wanted every bit of it to look like paint, then I might as well have used my box of watercolours or a box of inks. And you can see that the colour just spreads and spreads and spreads. It's the beauty of these Inktense pencils. They don't, it just goes for miles. This beautiful, rich amount of colour. If you get pencils called aquarelle, which are just water-soluble pencils, things like that, they don't spread as far as this solid ink does. And they make a pastel as well, which I don't like so much, but it's definitely got uses. So you can get Inktense pastels and Inktense pencils, both from Darwin, and I just love them. And now you'll find that if I work back in where it's wet, I get a much darker, thicker line on top of the existing wet. And that's the working on wet. Sometimes I'll wet the whole page and work on it. And I'm going to put in a few of these veins on the leaf. I love my scribbles as well. I don't know quite why, but a lot of my drawings end up having decorative scribbles that are, I don't know, perhaps it could be the life force of the thing, but without specific meaning, or don't necessarily relate to what's in front of me. I just feel like it gives it energy. So that's one for the It's Your Art, You Do What You Like category, because there are no scribbles. I've said that good drawing is good observation, but there's nothing between these leaves at all. Well, that I'm getting that from is come out of the because I feel like it part of because it's fun. Good, alright. Let me see. Yeah. So that's given you the basics of Inktense pencils there. And now let's do a little bit on soaking wet paper, because I promised to do a little bit on soaking wet paper, didn't I? So if I get the whole area wet, this is a little greeny, but I don't mind at all. I'm going to work straight into a puddle. Now this paper is 250 GSM, grams per square meter. So that means that it's quite heavy. It's almost like card. It's a mixed media pad, quite a smooth one, smoother than watercolor paper. And that allows me to do making a puddle on one part of the page without it totally disintegrating. So certainly it is necessary that you have quite thick paper to do this, otherwise it's just going to end up all wrinkled and coming to bits, and you're going to be having this beautiful drawing which has turned into toilet paper. So you don't want that effect, so make sure that your paper, I often use a mixed media pad even if I'm not actually planning to get it wet, because halfway through I change my mind and decide that I want to work in a puddle, and Yeah, I'm a bit of a turner. Apparently, I'm not absolutely sure if this is true, so feel free to comment that it's a myth if you like. But apparently, Turner liked to work on such wet canvases that if he had to work flat on the table like I'm doing, because if he'd have worked with them on an easel, all the paint would have poured off onto the floor. And that's how he got his beautiful wishy-washy skies and oceans. And I think it's incredible that anyone would be that loose and expressive almost 100 years before Impressionism was created. Amazing English artist. There are tons of Turners in the Tate, not the Tate Modern, the Tate, which is absolutely free and has the biggest Turner collection in the world and in London. And I absolutely recommend it. It's a really great way to spend particularly a rainy afternoon when walking around London isn't much fun if you were outside. Okay, so you can see a whole different thing going on because I'm working into a puddle. It's not getting quite, the line is already right from the beginning, you see. Now, negative space. An object itself is the positive space, if you like, is the thing, and negative space is the spaces between it, the spaces where nothing is. This is the negative space around this leaf. This is the negative space around the flower. I'm interested in creating this flower, which is very light colour, by creating the negative space rather than creating the thing itself. So a perfectly legit drawing technique is to draw in the places where something is not, rather than the places where something is. So here I go again, beloved scribbles. I have an outline, but it's an outline created by filling in the negative space, giving me a very different look to my other drawing, where it's all lines generated by making lines. Not that I didn't make some lines, but as you can see now, the lines are becoming not a big deal because the main thing that I'm doing is going with the negative space and filling a sheet with a lot of different little studies or sketches telling you lots of information about something. It's a great way to have an idea for maybe a bigger, more finished picture or a big painting. And it's also a great way to practice, and as you can see, I've gotten it so wet it's just dripping all over the place, but I don't mind. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much. Bye bye.